Live from Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harari.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. This is our second edition of my new show, Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. It's been a great fun for me. It's a wonderful gift I have with this podcast, and I really appreciate it very much. My name is Dan Harari. Last week, my guest was a very good friend of mine, Hollywood movie star Dee Wallace. And I got texts and emails from all across the country, many, that told me how much they enjoyed the show and how much they loved Dee. And I really appreciate that all of you guys out there wrote to me. That was very sweet. Tonight, I have another good friend of mine as a guest. Obviously, Dee Wallace is on the Hollywood side from my career, but my guest tonight, Steve Bassett, is from the UAP side of the fence. Before I bring him in, I want to just tell you a little story about how Stephen and I met. Last March, I was in San Francisco at a convention called UFO Con, and I was promoting my science fiction novel called After They Came, which is right here, as you can see. It's my UFO novel about benevolent aliens who come to Earth and save mankind, available on Amazon, by the way. And when I was promoting that book in San Francisco, my brother Bob, who lived nearby, he and I went to see Stephen's talk. And Stephen spoke about disclosure at that conference. And really, it was the first time I was exposed to the term and the idea behind disclosure. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really understand the context and how what a big deal disclosure is until Stephen gave his talk. Again, that was last March. So after he spoke, I went up to him and he and I exchanged business cards. And I said, if you're ever in LA, let's have lunch. So a few months later, Stephen and I had lunch at an Italian restaurant in Hollywood. And we met and we talked and we told each other our life stories. And then at one point, Stephen looked at me and said, Dan, what can we do together? And I had a light bulb moment, and I said, Stephen, you and I are going to create the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It sounded good. We weren't quite sure what it was at that moment, but we shook hands and we said, yes, let's do that. So that's how Stephen and I met, and that was March, and then again in June last year. Now let me read a little bit about his bio before I bring him in. Stephen Bassett is a political activist, a disclosure advocate, and the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, PRG, which he founded in 1996 in Washington, D.C., to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world on the topic and implications of disclosure. And disclosure is the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. And Stephen's also talked about the political implications of the UAP and ET phenomena. Stephen has given over 1,500 radio and TV interviews about his work, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and hundreds of other media outlets. In 2013, Stephen organized and conducted a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And the next year, 2014, he launched a 2-year political initiative that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. Stephen has appeared in many documentary films and TV shows, and many of his talks you can find available also on YouTube and lectures on YouTube. And again, like I said a minute ago, Stephen and I last year created, and in November, we launched the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance based in Los Angeles. Stephen and I are the co-founders. And with that behind me, and now I can move on to the fun stuff. Race, let's bring in my friend and my brother, Stephen Bassett.
Hi, Dan.
Stephen, how are you, man?
Nice to be with you. Look, congratulations on your new podcast. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. I know it's going to be successful. All I ask, promise, you'll keep taking my phone calls. Okay, that's all I want.
And I'll keep treating you to lunches at our favorite delis in LA.
Every deli, it's on our
Every
map.
deli.
Also, I
Right.
can't wait for the sequel to that book,
Oh, thank you.
which the ETs turn out to not be benevolent, and the whole thing turns into Battlefield Earth. It's going to be so cool.
You and Richard Dolan. Yeah, Richard Dolan yelled at me because my aliens were benevolent. He actually yelled at me.
Richard, kind of, every once in a while gets a little high strung. It's okay.
It's okay. That's all right. Well, anyway, listen, it's really fun to meet you. You know, you and I met not even a year ago, and look what we've accomplished together. You know, we're the fathers, we're the fathers of a child that has 100 members now and is rapidly growing. And it's all from a couple of deli lunches and a couple of ideas and friendship that we have together.
Never underestimate deli power.
Absolutely.
Most
Absolutely.
of the films that have ever gone on a big screen, conceived, fanned in delis. That's the way it works. I'm
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, here we go. I have some questions for you. We'll knock these right out and then we can fool around. All right. So tell us, Stephen, for someone who doesn't know, what is the truth embargo? How did it start? And why has it continued for such a long time?
For most of the last 76 years, it was called the UFO cover-up. But when I got involved and really started to try to create a true activist movement, not that there wasn't some of that, there was, and I wanted to try to change some of the language. And one of the things right away was UFO cover-up. And the reason is that it's not a cover-up. You cover up illegal acts, right? You don't cover up legal acts. And the decision of the United States government to withhold the truth of this ET presence going back to 47 was national security based. National Security Act of 47. It was legal. And so calling it a cover-up is basically telling everybody in the government attached to it that they're committing crimes. And that's not helping, right? Because most of them are just people doing their job and they're patriots and they want to defend the country. Truth embargo is what it is, like the embargo of Cuba. They've embargoed Cuba, right? Everybody knows it's there. You just can't go there. Okay, well, this is like that, except there's no Cuba. They've embargoed an island that they say doesn't exist. And that's why I changed the language. And so the truth embargo is the formal policy of the United States, along with its allies, post-World War II allies, to withhold the information regarding an extraterrestrial presence, classify it, and even undermine the ability of citizens to figure it out for themselves, since the damn things fly wherever they want. And that policy is now 76 years old, but I think it's coming to an end very soon.
Let me ask you this, and this isn't a prepared question, but I just thought of it. You know, the Battle of Los Angeles, was early 42, and Foo Fighters were seen all through World War II, 42, 43. Roswell was 47. So, Stephen, the question is, how much did our government know about aliens and UFOs in the early 40s, do you think?
As you go before 47, it's really thin. I'm not saying the historians in the future won't dig really hard, and they will. And of course, the government's going to be cooperative once we get in the post-disclosure era. But we don't know what they did with respect to the Foo Fighters. They were fighting a war, after all, so it was kind of probably side-tabled. David Grush came forward and indicated he had reports that a crashed vehicle in Italy was ultimately delivered to us. Now that could have happened, but obviously kept extremely close. It'll be interesting to see about that. There's a couple of other events. What's that town? I forget. Giardo something. Anyways, Rush Limbaugh's hometown. We may find out that the government knew more than we might have imagined at all before 47, but obviously totally tightly held. What matters about 1947 is the base commander Blanchard allowed the PR guy Haught to put out a press release saying we have a crashed vehicle. Right? They didn't mention the bodies. Thank God for them, because they'd mentioned the bodies, there would have been no way to take it back. But they wisely didn't mention the bodies. So that is what makes Roswell 47 really the beginning of the modern era of this phenomena.
Right. Absolutely correct. I understand that. Okay. So how to a layman, how would you explain the term disclosure to someone who doesn't necessarily believe, or maybe they think, yeah, maybe there's ETs. I don't know. I'm not sure. You are the champion of disclosure in Washington, D.C. You are the advocate and the champion for this
One
movement.
of many now.
One
One of
one
many,
of, but
actually.
certainly for probably that one of the earlier voices.
Yeah.
What is disclosure, Stephen? What does it mean? And what do you think is going to happen if we live long enough to see that day?
Well, disclosure is a basic term. It's about revealing, right? Disclosing. Everybody understands that. And going back into the 80s, the term started emerging primarily because of the work of Dr. Stephen Greer. He called a program that he created the Disclosure Project. Okay, name. And I think that project was about disclosing stuff, and he was getting witness testimony together and what have you. And he held a press conference, and so it was used in that context. Disclosure Project, small d disclosure, though, in that sense, the revealing process. As a matter of language, well, actually, it's more than language. As an activist and viewing this thing as an activist, I understood from studying the great activist movements, and there were many of the 20th century, that if you're going to get people to invest time and energy, even risk their lives and money, and commit to a long effort to get justice, to get the government to do something it doesn't want to do, you've got to have a prize. There has to be a defined target. It can't just be, we need to have world peace. Let's all get together and go get world peace. That's not defined enough. The Civil Rights Movement had the Civil Rights Act. The Indian Independence Movement had the British leaving. And these are pretty well-defined targets. We didn't have that in this genre. And so I said, I know what that target has to be. It has to be the formal confirmation from heads of state. Once the president and other presidents, certainly starting with one, probably ours, goes in front of the people based on whatever has just happened and says, yeah, we're not alone. We have visitors here, non-human. That is disclosure with a capital D. It is an event like, Earth Day, Columbus Day. It's an event, right? And it will be remembered down through history as Disclosure Day. Capital D disclosure is the event. It is the goal of this movement to get the president of the United States, hopefully first, but if it comes to it, second, third, fourth, because other heads of state are aware of this issue, I assure you. And that's what disclosure, capital D, means. And then after disclosure, we're in what I call the post-disclosure world. And that's post-small d disclosure, where the bringing forward and the revealing of information will accelerate and include great deal of information coming from the government itself.
The other day, I had this crazy thought, and I would love to hear your opinion on it. So, and you mentioned this a minute ago. So Roswell Crash happened. The poor PR guy there put out the press release. That would have been right. That would have been me, right? If I'm a publicist,
you, Dan, yes,
right? That would have been me.
You'd have taken the hit.
I would have taken the hit. He puts it out in all good faith. He obviously got it cleared by the commander there. It ran all over the world, media all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Stephen, here's my idea. What if Walter Hout, or what if he had called the White House, or his commander had called Truman and got Truman and said, Mr. President, we have a UFO. We have alien bodies. You're the president of the United States. What would you like us to do? And now here's the twist, Steve. What if Truman had said, hold on, I'm getting on the next plane. Let me check it out. Truman goes there, checks it out. They have a press conference, and he says, people of the world, look what we have. Day one, right? The truth embargo would have ended, and that would have been disclosure day one. Truman could have done it on day one. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't happen that way, because no, you don't go completely around the chain of command and call the White House right away.
If someone had called the White House,
well, it could have gone this way, and I've talked about this. Okay, so they get the material, they put out their press release, right? And by the way, Blanchard was not sanctioned at all for that. He went on to have a very successful career. Why? Because it was true, right? And it's like at the time, it wasn't like there were any protocols on that. And so he basically just put out the truth. and because they didn't mention the bodies, they were able to, put up some stupid tinfoil and say it was a weather balloon. They got away with it. So he did fine. But the decision was really with Roger Ramey at the Fort Worth base.
Right.
He is the one. He was above Blanchard, and he's the one who has to make the decision what to do. Of course, he undoubtedly got in touch with the White House. There's no question, one way or another. He's in touch with the Truman. And the decision was made at the White House level. Roger, you got to fix this. Okay? Fix it now.
But Stephen, that was the next day. That was a day later.
No. He fixed it that night. The press release went out in the morning. The second press conference was held that night. The article in the Roswell Daily Record, which I have up on my wall right over here,
of course,
was the next day. And so he gets it done. Now, Truman could have taken a different course. He could have said, look, let's sit on this. All right. Put out a statement that you're checking up on this. There's a press release, not sure about it, going to look at it. Let's sit on this for a little bit and decide what to do. And Truman could have talked with some more people. And had he done that, he might have come to another decision and said, look, let's go ahead and announce this. And so we get disclosure of the ET presence. They've got a craft, they've got bodies, they can show them or not show them in 1947. And the rest of the century would have been very different. There is a movie by Dick. I mean, it was a fantastic series and a fantastic book by Dick. I think it won the Nebulous Award or one of those big awards. It's called The Man in the High Castle. And it is basically a book in which we lose the World War II, and the Japanese and the Germans win, and it's about what it comes later. And these are not easy books to write. They're called alternative fiction. And somebody's going to write that book one day. What would the 20th century have been like? You and I could spend hours in a deli, we should, figuring this all out, because it's an incredible thing to realize what happened in those 53 years and what might have happened in those 53 years. But that decision, one of the most fateful in all of human history, was General Ramey, fix this.
If Ramey had said to Mr. President, come out here, please, we would love for you to see what we have. Let's talk about it. Truman came out and said, wow, this really is, now look, it's only 2 years after we dropped the bombs. And it's 9 years after Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, which scared half of America to death. So Truman was probably thinking, we can't tell. We need to protect our people. I don't want to have panic in the street. But if Truman had announced we have an extraterrestrial craft, he could have been the disclosure president.
He'd been the disclosure president, but he would change the 20th century. It is one of those things we'll never know. But I'll tell you, it's worth studying, or it's worth thinking about, because by taking that initial paradigm shift, which we're about to have finally, and projecting it forward and seeing how it would change things, it would help give people an understanding of just how bad we screwed up the second half of the 20th century. I mean, really, really bad. All right. That's, just me. Others might disagree. That's my opinion.
I think that's the day we all took a wrong turn. And I think
big wrong turn.
Truman could have changed the world. Okay. You've been a political activist and a disclosure advocate for just about 30 years. And you were in the room in July in Congress, sitting behind David Grush and David Fravor and Ryan Graves when they were testifying before Congress. Obviously, that was historic. And Grush got tons and tons of press. And I think I told you this. I live in LA, as you know. The next day, I looked on the front page of the LA Times, and there was a little article on page 26. Page 26, that David Grush said there are non-human pilots and off-world craft. And I'm thinking to myself, how is this on page 26? Anyway, what was that like for you to be in that historic room, and what are your feelings about what came from that?
By the way, New York Times, Washington Post have done tons of articles. In the last 10 days, the Wall Street Journal did 2 huge, beautiful spreads about MUFON, the Wall Street Journal. Look, I have a problem with the LA Times.
So do I.
Come out there. I'm going to have to smack some people on the face. because they are completely dropping the ball in this issue. I don't know what the bias is,
I know.
but it's one of the great papers. You know, it's Los Angeles. They made 600 films about ETs, and the paper's going, I don't know. And so let's see if we can't shake them up. Let's go on down there together, Dan. Knock on the door, go on in, sit down, and say we're not leaving until somebody, an editor, comes down to talk to us because you are missing the boat. What was it like? I waited 96 to. I waited 27 years to sit in that room. It wasn't a sure thing, but I was able to get in there. Danny Sheehan was with me. Danny Sheehan is one of the major players in this issue and will be a major player in the post-disclosure world, particularly since he's just launched his new Paradigm Institute think tank, which is going to be huge. Okay. And I just was, it gets better. It gets better because I got in there, there were some reserved seats, and I kind of sat off to the left. All right. And so they took some photos, and those photos started turning up. Right, there were various versions of them, and it was already cool. That shot of Grush and Graves and Fravor and so forth. But one of them was kind of special because you had Graves and Fravor kind of looking at Grush, who was kind of looking up, and he had a smile on his face. And then everybody in the background was kind of doing a Last Supper thing,
Right.
And there I was over there in the right side, looking really serious, second row, far right. And guess what? Time magazine selected that photo to be one of the Time Magazine 100 photos of the year. Okay. And so, hey, all right. Am I happy about that? You bet I am. And of course, we're going to have hearings in the Senate pretty soon. And I don't know what it's going to cost, who I have to pay off, but I'm going to be in that hearing room one way or another. I may be hiding under one of the tables, but I'll be there because that's coming.
Maybe we need to bring some pastrami deli sandwiches and walking in.
Bring food, right?
Pickles
camp out in the hallway the day, whatever it takes. I'm going to be in that room.
Right. Have you shown your sister that picture? Has your sister seen that picture of Time Magazine that you're in?
You know something?
You got to show her. You got to show your sister.
I have, and she needs to be cheered up. So thank you, Dan. I forgot. I'm so bad as a brother.
Yeah. Thank you. You need to show that to your sister. Okay. So you and I created something, and I'll get to that in a minute, but the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance really is bringing together Hollywood storytellers with UAP experiencers and researchers and activists such as yourself. But a question for you is, how have feature films and movies in Hollywood in general played a role in leading you to work as an advocate for disclosure?
I appreciate that question, Dan, because it's really very important to me. But first of all, let me mention Hollywood. As far as the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, Hollywood is simply a word which everybody knows worldwide that stands in for the entire film, television, and even music, the entertainment content creating industry. But we needed a term that everybody knew, even in Bangladesh, so it's Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. If I may, can I tell you a personal story?
Yeah, please. Absolutely.
It's 1969. I'm 20. I'm 23. I'm emerging as an adult. It's very painful, and it was a bad year in a lot of ways. A lot of terrible things were happening then. The 60s was the craziest, bizarre decade of my life. No decade since has really matched it. Though everybody has their preference, but now if you lived in the 60s, you know what I'm talking about. I think the 2020s is maybe going to exceed the craziness and wildness of the 60s, but it was a interesting time. I was stressed out. So I'm at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg. And I learned that there's a movie coming to town. Actually, it's coming to Tampa, and it's called 2001: Space Odyssey. Well, I'm a sci-fi guy. I've been reading sci-fi since I was 12 and all that stuff. I'm studying physics. I get a degree in physics eventually, whatever. But I got to see that. And so, and it's also playing at the Cinerama in Tampa. Now that was the IMAX of its time, not the big tie screen, but this huge curving screen, right, with the great sound and everything. So I said, gotta go see this. But I should take a date. So I asked this very nice young lady if she would go with me to see this movie, and I remember to this day her name was Reese. She was a music major, very nice. And she said, yes. Okay, great. So off we go, and we go to Tampa, and we get to the theater. Now, the movie wasn't doing well. I don't know. A lot of people think it must have been doing great. No, it wasn't. Right? It wasn't getting that great of reviews. Wasn't shaking the trees. And so we went to a matinee. There was hardly anybody in this massive theater, and this theater even had the big balcony. Right? So I said, "What the hell?" We go up in the balcony. We cruise right on down, front row balcony on the railing, dead center, and wait for the movie. And so,
Stephen, I have to interrupt you.
yeah,
On that note, we'll leave everyone hanging. We need to take a little commercial break, pay some bills. Race, take us into commercial. When we come back, we'll hear about Stephen's date at 2001.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
And we're back. I don't know how many people out there are listening to that break with stereo headphones, but boy, that music was fantastic. Race and Margie K, congratulations. That music was wonderful. Okay, let's bring Stephen Bassett back in. And there he is.
Mhm.
And there you're sitting on the front rail with a pretty girl, 2001 and the year 1969. That was the year of my bar mitzvah, Stephen. So I think you're exactly 10 years older than me. And I didn't invite you. I should have invited you.
By the way, before I continue, look, that incredible MUFON ad is incredible. That is narrated and created by Ron James, who is a colleague and friend of ours and a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Guy's a genius. It's beautiful stuff.
That's a great ad. Really, really well done. Okay, so tell us about your date.
So I'm sitting there, and then 2001 comes on, and very quickly I'm just leaning forward. I put my arms kind of on the railing, right, and park my chin on top of my hands, where I stayed for the next 2.5 hours. I mean, I was just absolutely taken in. It was a religious experience. I mean, it was just amazing. Of course, people understand that now. At the time, they're going, what's this movie about? And this movie was before CGI. What Kubrick did is still mind-bending. Okay. And so it's over, and we're walking out of theater, and I turned to Reese, and I said, Reese, that was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And she said, I really hated that movie. So, no second date. But let me be clear. If I hadn't seen 2001 Space Odyssey, and I don't mean later on TV or something, if I hadn't seen it in that theater, that massive screen with the music, at that point in my life, I would not be sitting here talking to you now. And it makes the point that first, film, the creation of film, movies, TV too, but let's talk about film, is the most powerful, complicated, difficult, and extraordinary art form there is. I'm not trying to throw shade on painting and sculpting and music, whatever. I'm just saying what geniuses can do, and it's a collective art too, which makes it even more amazing. With film is amazing, and it has the power to affect people profoundly, and that certainly happened with me in 2001. But many years later, because I'm not a sentimental guy, I don't cry at rom-coms and stuff. These movies do not move. Yeah, they're funny, I laugh, but no, it takes something to really get to me. It took many years before the second film had that kind of power on me.
Close Encounters?
No, Close Encounters was cool, but it wasn't cool. It didn't have the kind of thing that affected me with 2001. I am talking about Christopher Nolan's absolute masterpiece, Interstellar. Yeah. I've seen it about 3 times. I always cry. This movie is just, I can say, I mean, a movie moves somebody in relation to their background, what they know, what they care about, what they've studied, and of course, obviously, that's all over the scale. But for me, particularly at that point, I was many years into this work, right? Interstellar and it doesn't have any extraterrestrials in it. You think there might be, but there actually aren't. Doesn't matter. It's just, oh God. And so that had a major impact on me, helped me continue to do my work. And then recently, another movie pretty much moved me that level. That's 3. And this movie you and I saw together on a big screen.
Right.
And once again, the genius of Christopher Nolan comes out. And I'm referring to the movie Oppenheimer. Now, Oppenheimer doesn't have any ETs in it, obviously. And a lot of people think, well, okay, fine, it's a good movie. It's a great movie. It may win the Oscar. But why are you moved by it? Well, the reason I'm moved by it is because I know a lot about nuclear war. And I know a lot about the history of the bomb. You want to know a lot? Read Richard Rhodes's masterpiece, The Making of an Atomic Bomb. And he also does one on the hydrogen bomb. He won the Pulitzer Prize, the book award. There, it turns out, as we will learn soon enough, there is a tremendous connection between the extraterrestrial presence and agenda and nuclear weapons. And so when I'm watching that film, all of that is connecting inside of me. And so as you remember, when it was over, man, I was just really intensely involved. So what's the point here? The point is film is the most powerful, assuming it's done correctly. I mean, I'm assuming it's done from the heart. If it's done authentically, film has the power to completely alter people's worldview, change their lives. It also has the power to completely corrupt people and send them down some road to hell, right? We know that, right? Propaganda films and so forth. But legitimate, authentic documentaries and narratives have the ability to change people's lives in ways that a sculpture and a painting and reading a book just don't have. And guess what? The biggest event in human history is about to happen. The film industry has already figured that out. And of the 2 major things going on in the country right now, one of them is in Los Angeles and in the film industry, where they are waking up to the fact that, oh my Lord, there's 8 billion people out there and they're going to want to know everything about this. And we got the tools, right? We know how to do it. And we're just starting to get the beginnings of this, but there's plenty of projects going on. But the 2 that most people may know about, but are highly indicative, both come from legendary studios and directors. The first one came out 2 years ago from Bad Robot and J.J. Abrams. It was called, UFO. 4-part series, documentary, Showtime. Highest rated show in the history of Showtime. And now about 1.5 years, almost 2 years go by, and Amblin, Steve Spielberg, comes out with Encounters, a 4-part nonfiction series. Again, fantastic reviews. That's only the beginning. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance knows this is coming, but also knows that for the last 70-some years, the people that were making the docs and writing the books and doing the research, in spite of the fact that government says you guys are crazy, were my colleagues. Some passed, not getting paid much, up against the government's policy of truth embargo,
right?
Continuously working on it. And the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is about making sure these tremendous genius content creators and the UAP ET citizens, I guess you could call them, can connect. They can find each other to create the content that's going to educate the entire planet once disclosure breaks, which could be soon. And so it's totally nonprofit, not commercial. All it does is help people get together. That's it. But it's going to succeed in that regard. And we have about 100 members. Hopefully we'll have about 200 within another couple months.
It's really remarkable how quickly, from the lunch when we had the idea to where we stand today with 100 people and a board of directors and legendary members, and it's been really remarkable. So for me personally, Stephen, the Close Encounters was my 2001. I saw it when it came out in 77. Didn't really know what it was. Saw it by myself. And when the little aliens take Richard Dreyfuss's hand at the end and lead him toward the ship, I started to cry. I have seen that movie 50 times, and every single time, like you, I have cried every single time when he's walking. I don't know why, really. And this is funny because, I had a pretty well-known by now experience with a UFO in 1970 with my dad. So this is 77 when Close Encounters came, 77 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not yet recalled that UFO encounter with my father, which was profound. But there was something about a ship and the little aliens being friendly and taking him on, and him going to explore the new worlds like the next Magellan or the next Columbus. It spoke to me. I cried. I sat in my chair. I cried for a while before I could leave the theater. So that was my, again, I'm a little bit younger than you, but that was my experience. It was also very profound for me as well.
Let me add this, Dan. You just can't overstate the potential and power of the content creators to make this all work out well. And let me give you another very interesting example. It's a left-right punch, right? Two puncher. Whitley Strieber, genius, great writer. He's an experiencer, big time. And so he writes the first book about this called Communion. And this is way back. I think it was in the early 80s. I forget the exact year. And back when books were a big thing. And so because he's a best-selling writer, all the bookstores grabbed it, took it, and they were stacking the book up in the windows all over the country with a cover of an extraterrestrial on it, big face, gray, extraterrestrial. And so what was happening, so that's a piece of content, book form. People were walking by the bookshops and seeing this cover, and multiple of them, versions, in the window, and women in particular were having flashes. It was like, whoa, I've seen that, or whatever. And almost in a sense, I mean, Betty and Barney Hill story goes back to the 60s, but I think in a sense, Whitley Strieber, and with that cover launched the modern era of contact and its engagement. And then, of course, naturally, the film industry came along and made a movie about it with Christopher Walken, which again got that issue out. This is what we're talking about here, and there's going to be a lot more coming.
Absolutely. I've watched Fire in the Sky 3 or 4 times too. That blows me away as well. I would love to meet Travis Walton at some point. He seems like a cool guy. Race, can we throw up some of the Stephen photos from the years from when he had hair to today?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah,
the devolution of Stephen Bassett's hairline. Let's do that. Look at that. That's a great picture. Stephen, what year is this photo here? What year is that?
Early 1997. This is a picture taken by the photographer that came out with a reporter from the Washington Post that wrote a very substantial article that was on the front page of the Post business section, which is a major page that essentially launched my career. It gave me the cred that I needed to, people care about what I was doing.
That's a great picture, man. I love that picture.
And that book, by the way, is the account of the 1992 symposium that John Mack and Dr. Pritchard put on and held at the MIT about contact, a major event. And that's the full record of it. 1992. He was ahead of his time. He paid for that. Wow. But yeah, I've got that book right behind me.
Let's see the next picture.
My good friend Danny.
Right. So tell people who don't know who Danny is.
Danny Sheehan is one of the great justice and activist lawyers of the 20th century, still going strong. He has created the New Paradigm Institute, which is essentially going to be a major institute. They have some funding. They're going to get much more funding. They already have an office open to 1 block from the Capitol. and a good friend of mine, Jim Garrison, is manning that office. Danny has been all over the Hill for months now, dealing with the breaking developments, and you're going to be seeing a lot of Danny Sheehan.
Okay, next photo. What do we got here?
That was an article, I guess, no, I did an interview for PBS, and that was the promo they used.
Very, very cool. Okay, next.
Another podcast promo graphic.
And you had a little bit more hair at that point, looks like.
Yeah.
This is a good one.
Hair here. This goes back.
This is a good one. Yeah. You've been doing this quite some time, my friend. Quite some time.
27. I've done 1,500 plus. No one has done more interviews on this subject than I. I'm not saying we're talking CNN or 60 Minutes. I'm just saying nobody has done more interviews on this subject than I have.
I believe that's probably correct. All right. So you mentioned John Mack a minute ago.
Okay, that photo. You got to get that photo out of your computer, man. Put that one away. Kill that off.
That's a bad one. That's a bad one. All right, we'll kill that. Race, kill that picture.
Kill that photo, Race.
Don't let that be in the rerun of the show. We'll edit that out. All right, so Stephen, you worked in the 90s. I know you worked with John Mack.
Yes.
He was a legendary psychiatrist at Harvard. Tell people who John Mack was and why he was important in this.
I didn't work for John Mack. I was a volunteer at John Mack's program for extraordinary experience research, which is how I broke into this issue.
Okay.
I went through a very good door because I was willing to work for free. That's a lesson I should have learned when I was younger. And I had a wonderful 4 months there. I met wonderful people. I met my first contactees up in Cambridge. But it was only so long I could stay as a volunteer, and then John, of course, had just gone through the tribunal that Harvard put together because I think they wanted to shut him down. But his lawyer, with the help of Danny Sheehan, they held this event, this tribunal. I think John ended up spending about $250,000 defending himself against Harvard University because, well, there are no ETs, and contactees are clearly all crazy, and we're really concerned you're going to taint the image of Harvard. Well, he won, and they basically okay, continue your work, but Harvard is going to answer for that someday. And he was put through other problems, which I don't need to go back over, but his work was extraordinary. He did get a couple of papers done. He deserves the Medal of Freedom. He deserves to be completely re-examined, and that he died from an accident in 2005 was one of the crushing things for me, because I planned on bringing to one of my conferences and getting a chance to maybe meet him, maybe spend a little more time with him. But he's a legend in this field, one of the great men of the 20th century. He did a lot more than just study the contact phenomena. But John Mack's organization and their willingness to let me come out to Cambridge, again, if they say no, I probably am not here today.
Does he have any living relatives that you're aware of?
Sure. Son, other family. They're very private,
Okay,
but they're still here. And a movie has come out recently called Aerial School about his work with the kids in Rua, Zimbabwe. Find it. It's fantastic. You can see John Mack at his best, working with these children, getting their stories. It's one of the great, well, it's simply one of the more extraordinary documented cases. But there have been many such cases where saucers craft land near schoolyards and talk and telepathically communicate to kids. What can I say?
That was one of the episodes of Encounters.
That's right. It was
with John Mack,
which is good on Amblin. I mean, they gave Mack some great. Well, they gave Mack some love, and we're going to see more of John Mack in the content world.
You know, just off the cuff, you and I should talk to Ron Janix about having a John Mack relative at the Legends panel, maybe.
Perhaps, but again, they're very private. They're very private.
Okay. About over 10 years ago, you presented a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club. That was 2013, and I know you were very proud of that event. What were your goals for that event, and what came from that?
Yeah, this is an extraordinary event. It's the sum and bone. It's probably the most significant thing I've done. I produced the hearing, right? It was basically a mock congressional hearing. We brought in 42 witnesses from 10 countries that testified over 5 days in groups of 2 and 3 at a time. Nothing like that had ever been done. but it was run like a real hearing, and the panel that took the testimony under oath were 6 former members of Congress that spent a whole week doing this. The hearing itself was produced by myself and Joseph Buckman, and the AV and the filming and all the tech and everything, which is very substantial, was produced by Ron James and Reuben Langdon, and it was a very significant event. It was designed for many things. One, it was a setup for the campaign that was coming with Clinton. Because I was eventually going to deliver the full 30 hours of that to every member of Congress as a DVD set before launching a pretty substantial media campaign to get Ms. Clinton and her husband and John Podesta to address the issue, which they had to. 400 articles were written about the connection between her or her husband or Podesta and the issue.
Right.
Now, that was one of my achievements. But also to show, because we live streamed it. Right. So if you were afraid to be down at the ballroom of the National Press Club, which is where it was held, 2 blocks from the White House, because you didn't want to be seen with a bunch of UFO people, you could watch it from the comfort of your office or home. So we live streamed it, and we wanted to show as many people as possible what hearings would really be like. And these were a lot of hearings, right? It wasn't just a couple of people for a day. This is 5 days, 42 witnesses, and it was perfect. All right. In other words, it was great. It wasn't, crazy, wild, or anything else. The witnesses are extraordinary. The members of Congress, the former members, did a great job. So it was my way of saying, hey, guys, it's going to be fine. Hold the damn hearings. Now, that was 2013.
Right.
It's taken 10 years to finally get the first hearing since 58. And that was courtesy of my new heroes, Congressman Tim Burchett, Congressman Anna Paulina Luna, Congresswoman Nancy Mace,
right,
and a few others. They held the first hearing, and that, of course, was the Grush hearing. And more hearings are coming. And I hope the citizen hearing on disclosure will have some life, and people will remember what was done back then.
Well, you were really 10 years. I mean, you planted a seed, and almost exactly 10 years later, you were in the room with Grush in front of Congress. So,
yeah.
Hat off to you for being a pioneer in this field. You've had a lot of challenges and a lot of negativity thrown at you, and you're like the Energizer Bunny, man. You persevere.
Let me say this: I've been very fortunate. I've had very little, really, negativity thrown at me. To be honest, I really haven't. I have colleagues who have had plenty of that. But I set out from the beginning to operate in a way to minimize that, because, if you can minimize it, you want to, because it's bad juju, bad karma. But if you want that, you can easily make it happen. But I've done, I think, a pretty good job in staying out of that. I have a few people out there don't like me. I get it. Of course, that's going to happen. But overall, I have not been bothered in that way, and I haven't been bothered by the government in any way whatsoever.
That's good. So let's talk a little bit more about the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
What do you foresee in the next 2-3 years for us as we gain more members around the world, and we're going to have events, and we have newsletters, we have means by which our members are communicating with each other. I know deals are starting to happen between screenwriters and experiencers. What obviously our timing was really quite remarkably good when we came up with this idea. What do you see for the next year or two as far as our influence in the entertainment world?
Oh, I can't think out that far. I mean, we need to think, what are we going to do in the next couple of months? And why do I say that? Disclosure is coming. It's inevitable. Give me 3 hours and I'll explain all the reasons why, but it's coming. And so I think by the time disclosure happens, we should probably be up around 200 members. And then, of course, when disclosure happens, I think the sky's the limit, assuming we behave well, and I think we will. Right now, we're in that, we didn't start with a lot of money, Dan. I think you know that. You and I are out of pocket a few coin. But so, the Environmental Media Association, which is very similar to this, which you were involved with 30 some years ago, started with millions, right?
Sure.
No big deal. That's fine. But what we're doing now is trying to build up some credibility, keep refining the website, and eventually, I think some of the very better, well-known, highly accomplished individuals in the industry are going to be comfortable enough to say, hey, I think I'd like to be on that. And once that starts, we have one major star that may be turning up on the website soon.
Right.
It could pick up speed because obviously we want everybody to be able to connect, but clearly we would like the people in this field to have some access to the people that can really do stuff, that have enormous power. This issue warrants that. It's worthy of that. And the biggest studios in LA, with some of the biggest names in LA, they don't have the knowledge. It's not a criticism. They just don't. They've been busy making monster movies, right? Sure. They don't have the knowledge that my colleagues and our colleagues have, Dan, and so they need that knowledge, and we need to be able to have the ability to create content. And so I'm just thinking about the next 2 months. If we can get to about 200 members and get a few very significant people, you and I have a number in mind, that are willing to endorse us. It costs nothing. We just put their name and bio. And by the way, look, if you are somebody with a track record in the UAP research, activist, journalist, documentary area, or a track record in the content creation world, and you think you'd like to be a founding member of the HDA, get in touch with one of the other founding members, or get in touch with Dan or I, and we'll take it to the committee. And very likely you can become a founding member, either UAP side or the film industry, or what we call the Hollywood side. Just throwing that out there.
Exactly right. And the website is HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org for anyone who's interested to read more about it, and our members and our board and our mission statement. And there's an application there you can apply as well. And we are seeking people on both sides, like Stephen just said. We have time for one more question. I think we can squeeze this in. You were the very first. Tell me if this is incorrect. You were the first lobbyist to advocate for UAP ET issues and disclosure in Washington, D.C. Is that
first
true?
One to register, yeah. That was my hook. That's what got me some attention, because nobody else was stupid enough to do it.
And what made you think of it? And what were the early days like for you?
Well, the early days were, just slowly trying to get, you got a computer, right, and whatever, and you're trying to get something out there and get known. Mostly you want to get media. And eventually I did get some media. And then I got the Washington Post article. What was the first part of that question again? Real quick.
You registered as the lobbyist.
Oh, yes.
What made you think of doing that?
I was up at John Mack, PEER, Program for Extraordinary Spirits Research, and I knew I had to do something else. I had to find a way, and it hit me. I was sitting in the office like a download. Boom, right? Boom. The whole issue should have been resolved long ago. Why wasn't it? Because there wasn't enough proof. There was proof piled to the ceiling. Okay, well, if the proof is piled to the ceiling, why isn't totally it being engaged?
Right.
Because of a government policy. The problem was not proof or science. It was politics. This was a political problem that needed to be solved by politics. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I know something about politics. I've been around DC almost my life. How could I engage it? And then it hit me again. I'll bet nobody has ever registered as a lobbyist on this. I got a family home there, place I can work out of for free. What if I go down, register as a lobbyist, and engage the issue? I'll bet the Washington Post will come calling. I swear, that's exactly what was going through my head. I was so panicked that somebody might beat me to that, like if I could think of it, somebody else could, that I ended up, really rushing and getting everything squared away. And I ended up driving down on July the 4th to Washington from Boston in a driving torrential rainstorm with all my stuff piled on top of a Mazda RX-7.
like the Beverly Hillbillies truck, right? With all your possessions.
Yeah, like Beverly Hillbillies. I'm thinking that stuff's going to fly off. There's going to be an accident on the freeway. I'm going to jail. So I'm driving like 30 miles an hour. It took 10 hours or something. And I get down there and I walk in and sit down in front of my aunt. And I said, I need to stay for a while. And she said, how much money have you got? And I said, because she was kind of like a cantankerous woman. I said, I got 18 cents. She said, I knew it. Right. And I moved in and registered, I think, the same week, right? You just go online and you learn how to do it. It doesn't cost anything. And I registered. Then I had to come up with a name and all that. But it came to me. The reason it came to me because first I had to go to Cambridge. I had to get into it more. I had to get more pumped up. And then, of course, I found my path. In other words, having a passion in life is one of the great gifts that anybody can have. I wish it was more common. But you also need a path. If you've got a passion and a path, you're going to be happy. Right? No matter how poor you are or how whatever else you're missing, you're going to be happy. I got both in 1996, and I should have no complaints about anything, though, as you know, I'm more than happy to complain.
Well, your path led you to a very remarkable place. We have to wind it down real quick. My path was a 1970 UFO sighting with my dad. 2017, I wrote a book. 2023, I met you at a convention. We created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, and a few months ago, the UNX Network gifted me with this podcast. So those of us who are on this path have a calling for whatever reason. We all come from different directions, but we're all meeting in the middle, and it's a wonderful time to be involved with this. We got to wrap it up, Stephen. Thank you very much. Any plug? You want to plug your PRG website?
Look, and you know about this. Contact in the Desert this year is going to be incredible. May 30 to June 3.
Right.
The Renaissance Resort in Indian Wells, probably 3,000 plus people. Get your room. Go to the website. You got to book your rooms to the website to get the discount, but get your rooms early.
Okay. And do you want to mention PRG website?
ParadigmResearchGroup.org. Find the print media archive. 15,000 articles there. You can be the smartest person on this issue in the world. Okay. Fantastic. And follow me on Twitter at Steve Bassett.
That's great. And also, again, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. And for myself to reach me and read about my books, DanHarariAuthor.com. My books are up there. I have 2 books out and I have 2 books coming. Thank you, Margie and Race at the UNX Network, for everything. Thank you, everyone, for watching the show. Next week, my good friend Ray Richmond is my guest. Ray has crazy, crazy stories about Hollywood and his mother, who apparently was a witch of some kind and did curses on people that came true. So tune in next week. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week. See you next time on Paranormal.